So on today's Tuesday Thoughts, we're going to discuss the ideas of fertility versus productivity. Do they mean the same thing? Are they different? What's the story with fertility versus productivity? So if we want to start with fertility first, fertility is simply the nutrient levels within a soil, or the nutrient levels in a cropping system. It's simply to get higher fertility, you just have to have more of the elements there, and you can get into debate versus availability versus totals, but essentially if the elements are there in a large amount, we would say the soil has a high level of fertility. Now productivity would be the ability of the soil to produce yield, be it tons of hay or bushels of grain, what have you, but just produces tons of something or product to go off. Now, productivity is very reliant on two things. It's climate and it's soil. So you can have soil that may not be the greatest, but because of the climate it's in, it can be very productive. Likewise, you can have a very good soil that should be able to produce lots of good yielding crops, but if it's in a semi-arid environment in a dry year, its productivity is reduced. So productivity has a lot to do with soil, the soil and the climate it's in, not necessarily tied to fertility. So when you can combine the two, you can have a very fertile soil, but based on its climatic region of where it's in, or based on the fact that the subsoil is high in, say, clay content and there's very low water infiltration ability or available water to the plant, well then your productivity is going to be low. So that's where you can get conflicting ideas on what's a productive soil versus fertile soil, and do they mean the same thing, and do they always go down the same path? And that's not necessarily the case. So the other thing to think about, you can have a productive soil that's not necessarily fertile. If you want to think about a sandier soil that can't hold a lot of plant nutrients, you might think it has low fertility. But if you fertilize it correctly or you manage inputs correctly, you can produce a lot of yield. And that would be one of those things, that very instance is what we see when we do a lot of grid soil sampling. We often see that the lowest, some of the lower fertility areas are the highest productivity. Because we have the high productivity, we're removing more nutrients, those areas require more inputs to continue to keep up that fertility and continue to lift the productivity of that already productive soil. So hopefully that explains a little bit better on the differences of productivity and fertility. And if you're choosing, you always want to have a good productive soil, because you can always adjust fertility and change things up. As long as that productivity is there, that's where you want to start at. So hope that helped today. Thanks.